All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle one of the biggest, most complicated challenges out there right now. How in the world do we build a shared rulebook for advanced AI? Before it gets way too powerful for us to handle.
And that really is the question, isn't it? Advanced AI isn't just a local thing. It's completely global, and all the potential risks that come with it, we're talking everything from massive economic shifts to brand new kinds of conflict, well, those risks don't care about borders. So the solution has to be global too.
Yeah, and that's exactly why you're seeing this massive push for international agreements. These challenges are just too big for any one country to solve by itself. It's a lot like how we think about climate change or pandemics, right? These are systemic risks, and the only way to deal with them is with a coordinated, worldwide game plan.
So how do you even start building something this massive and complex? Well, you start with a blueprint. We're going to walk through how AI governance is being constructed, and it's a journey that really does start with simple handshakes and hopes to end with real binding laws.
Okay, let's talk about this term, accords. Now, in this context, an accord isn't some final, rigid law. It's what our source material calls an institutional seedbed. I love that phrasing. Think of it like preparing fertile ground. You're planting the first seeds of shared ideas and rules, hoping they'll grow into something much, much stronger.
And that growth, it doesn't just happen overnight. It follows a pretty clear path, moving from what you might call soft law to hard law. It all kicks off with joint declarations. That's just countries getting together and agreeing on a shared idea. From there, you build frameworks to give it some structure. But the ultimate goal? A formal treaty, a binding promise that everyone has to stick to.
A treaty is the endgame here. It's the core legal document. But here's the tricky part. For something that changes as fast as AI, a treaty can't be set in stone. The source has this brilliant description. It calls the treaty a compact between states and technology. So the real balancing act is making it clear enough to actually enforce, but also flexible enough to adapt as AI keeps evolving.
But, agreeing that we need a treaty is one thing. Actually making one is a whole different ballgame. It's the super delicate process that requires a pretty special set of tools. This is where the real art of diplomacy and statecraft comes into play.
And when we talk about diplomacy here, it's not just about polite conversations. It's way more of a strategic game. Just like it says here, it's the art of aligning incentives. That really means finding ways to get countries with totally different priorities, maybe even countries that are competing with each other, to agree that, hey, working together on AI safety is actually in all of our best interests.
And there are basically two main roads you can take to get there. On the one hand, you've got bilateral agreements, just between two nations. The source calls this testbed diplomacy. So, for example, picture the US and the UK teaming up to share safety research. It's fast, you can build a lot of trust and test ideas quickly. But the downside is its reach is pretty limited. And that's where multilateral agreements come in. This is when a big group, like the G7 or the UN, tries to create a single framework. You get that wide coverage you need for a global problem. But the trade-off is huge. Getting dozens of countries to agree on every little detail, it's incredibly complicated.
Okay, so let's just imagine for a second that the diplomats actually pull it off. An agreement gets signed. That's amazing, but honestly, it's only half the battle. Now comes the really hard part, making sure that all those rules on paper actually mean something in the real world.
This brings us to verification, and I absolutely love this definition. It's the epistemic engine of enforcement. It's a fancy way of saying, how do we actually know if people are following the rules? Verification is all the technical stuff, the audits, the inspections, the shared standards that allow us to trust that other countries are really doing what they promised. So in that US-UK pact we imagined, verification is how they'd confirm a new AI model actually passed the safety tests they agreed on. Without it, a treaty is just empty words.
So if verification is the engine, then international law is what the source calls the coercive spine of compliance. This is what gives the whole thing its backbone, its legal force. If verification finds that a country broke the rules, this is what gives the agreement its teeth. It lays out the consequences, and it's what turns the simple handshake into a real binding commitment.
And finally, you have execution. This is where the rubber meets the road, where governance gets translated into practice. An agreement on a piece of paper is useless without people and organizations to make it happen. Execution means building the actual institutions, like international AI safety bodies, regulators, and inspection teams that are needed to monitor and enforce the treaty day in and day out.
And this table just illustrates so perfectly how it all fits together. See, AI Accords aren't just one single thing. They're like a whole technology stack for institutions. You start at the top with the normative layer, the shared ethics, kind of like a constitution. Then you get the legal political layer, that's your contract with enforcement. Underneath that, you need the technical layer. Those are the engineering safety rails. And all of that is supported by institutional capacity and a high-level strategic architecture. Every single layer is absolutely essential for the whole system to actually work.
So after all of that, all the complexity, the diplomacy, the verification, the legal frameworks, you have to ask, what is the ultimate goal? Why are we going through all this trouble?
The answer really comes down to one word: peace. But we're not just talking about preventing war in the old-fashioned sense. It's about creating strategic stability, seriously reducing the risk of some catastrophic accident, and stopping a dangerous AI arms race before it can even get started.
Because when these accords actually work, they deliver what our source calls peace dividends. That means more stability, fewer accidents, and an environment where countries can actually focus on safe, cooperative innovation instead of just trying to one-up each other. The ultimate payoff is a massive reduction in global systemic risk for every single one of us.
So here's the crucial takeaway. Building this kind of global trust and cooperation is incredibly difficult. It might be one of the hardest things humanity has ever tried to do. But when you really stop and look at the stakes, at what could happen if we get advanced AI wrong, you just have to ask yourself, is there really any other choice? Thanks for tuning in.